Hey friends, Alvin here. Welcome back to Book Club. Today we are looking at Chapter 6, which is Launching the Faith Journey Well from Youth Ministry Now and Not Yet. And so, I'd like to welcome back again our Director of Next Generation Ministries, Matt Wilkinson. Welcome back, Matt.
Great to be with you. Here we are. As we enter into chapter six, this is one of those important chapters, as we've called it here, launching the faith journey well. One of the main focuses of youth ministry, the whole reason that we invest our lives into the next generation is really setting them up for the life that is ahead of them. How do we journey and partner and see this discipleship element? How do we see significant, meaningful spiritual life change? We're not in the business of just behavior modification, but really about spiritual transformation in the life of the young person as they mature into adulthood and really put down the roots of their identity, put down their roots in terms of their belief and their core understanding that they then live out, and it shapes decisions that they make in their lives. So we want to look at how do we launch the faith journey well through the age of young people, through their teen years and into early young adult. I really love the illustration that was shared by Dr. Cara Powell from the Fuller Youth Institute. It was an illustration understanding how often we've done church in ministry to next generation has been the idea of kind of like there's an adult table, many of us call it big church, and then there is the kids table, youth ministry program, children's program, nursery. We have this idea that we've separated out these generations. We've gone into an age and stage mode. And if if you've lived through life through the 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe even 2000s, you know that from like family meals, large family get-togethers, something that we're not able to do in the midst of COVID, but we know well of get together. And it's like, okay, the room's not big enough, the table's not long enough. So you got the adult table, you got the kid table. There's some elements that are great about that. Some elements that really work well for both the ages and stages. But this shaping and this modeling as this found itself into the church has some strengths, but also some things that we have to see as flags and say we need to learn from and actually go, did we miss something in what we're setting up in order to ensure that we launch the faith journey well for our young people? Because this is a way that they are shaped by older generations. So what we can say, and I want to have it clear, that there is an important element to have elements of our ministry that is age and stage appropriate. It's very critical for development, holistic development of kids, of youth, of young adults, about that we recognize the age and stage importance. But we cannot just exclusively land in there. We have to understand an element of the value that comes from intergenerational interactions. As we look at the calling that's given to us in Psalm 78, verses 1-7, is that importance of mentoring, that importance of investing in the next generation so that they're able to then carry the ways of the Lord into the next generation, into those who are not yet born. What this is really modeling is that it's sharing life together. It's not just simply knowing a piece or seeing a story or tying in one verse that I know, but it's actually, how does this get lived out? How does the ways of the Lord get lived out in such a way that I can embody it so that I'm now embodying it so much that it gets lived out into those that I'm then influencing? The next generation will learn the ways of the Lord, not by just what they're told, but by watching and experiencing it lived out. If they are if they're always regulated to the kids' table, to the youth program, to the children's program, and that's the only space that they get to understand the word of God and get to understand the ways of how the relationship with Jesus gets worked out, then it misses the mark. It can become limited. It can become very irrelevant to a larger world and a disconnect from how it can apply to their day-to-day, everyday lives. How does my relationship with Jesus affect my finances, my relationships? How does it down the road affect purchasing? How does it affect the way that I choose to lead, invest into others? How do I serve? How do I look out for different needs? How do I be a good community person? How do I think about environment? How do I respond to the world around me as a follower of Jesus if I've just been relegated to that kids table? They need to see it lived out by those that they respect. It'd be lost to become so fully intergenerational, though, that we miss out on the ministry to youth and the next generation that's needed for age specific stuff. They're learning how they engage, some of the relationships that are formed in there, how they will interact, the influence and the value of peer influence and the peer gatherings. So this is important, and that's what we found that led to a lot of what we understand for youth ministry. But here's what's happened is that the pendulum swung huge. There was a age and stage and everything became siloed. It's very easy to actually have a pendulum shift right back and go, everything becomes intergenerational. And that we remove children element, we remove youth element, we just say that we are going to just be a community together. I think actually what we need to land in, if we're going to actually launch them well into a faith journey, is to recognize that there is some strength to the siloing and to the uniqueness of age and stage, and there's a real importance of intergenerational learning and engagement. And when these are actually met together as part of a holistic experience, it allows them to have the healthiest experience of when they can understand and a way that they are able to relate and see that lived out on a broader place. In the Bible, in the book of Mark, chapter 2, we hear the story of the paralyzed man who friends carried him up. I had to cut a hole in the roof because what they wanted to do is they wanted to get this man to Jesus. They're going to do whatever it took. Nothing was going to get in the way. They cut a hole in the roof. They lowered him to Jesus. Friends, this is what we were doing in the 70s. This is where youth ministry moved from just a ministry to young people to really be youth ministry. What it was is that young people were leaving the church en masse. They were walking away from a relationship with Jesus. And leaders of the faith, people committed to the next generation, said, we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that these young people come into relationship with Jesus. And so they created what we know as youth ministry. They created an agency that said, we're going to become completely focused on what is their needs, how do we engage them, how do we meet them where they're at. And in that, we removed a lot of the elements that were intergenerational so that we could really meet them right where they were and everything they needed. In that process, we can look up and go, you know what? That roof still needs to be fixed. That roof in and of itself was never a bad roof, but that roof was keeping that person from getting to Jesus. The roof of the intergenerational, the whole community element was keeping kids from getting to Jesus. So we had to get rid of it for a period of time to really focus in on how do we do well of engaging youth, of moving them closer to Jesus. But that roof in that building needed to be repaired. It was never a bad roof. And we need to do the repairing of what is it to do intergenerational work and see that ministry so critically together. So we want to continue to keep that same passion that we will do whatever it takes to move students closer to Jesus, and that whatever barriers are in the way, we'll remove them so kids can move closer to Jesus. But we have to also be part of the repairing work of how do we restore that roof? How do we restore that intergenerational learning, engagement, investment, and ultimately what I would argue to say is mentoring and being able to share life across generational lines, to learn from one another, to encourage one another, to grow together. So what we created those specialized places, specialized areas, speakers, buildings, programs, pastors for youth. Those weren't all bad. That was a great move. We saw a really important move forward for engagement of next gen. But what we're also learning is that we now got to say, how do we now move them forward? What we need to do is equip parents and young people to welcome leaders into the faith journey of the next generation. I want to call this mentoring, where they actually share life together, where it's the everyday moments to understand, how do I enter my relationship with Jesus into these everyday moments? How do I have to ask to try to make sense of when I experience suffering, when I experience prayers not answered, when I experience death in family, when I experience questions and concerns? Who am I going to, and who is helping me in my day-to-day walk? There needs to be apprentices, and we're learning the skill sets that we live in everyday realities. We need to have life mentors. We need to have those who are biblically engaged leaders of older generations helping us understand the ways of the Lord and the truths into the lives of students. They need to see it lived in our everyday. So we need to have youth engaged in the larger life of the church. If we want to see and launch them well into their faith journey for decades and decades to come, it does understand that we meet them where they are at. It also says we actually see not just as the church of the future, as future followers of Christ, but as followers of Christ now as you come into relation with him, as the church now. We need to find ways that we are intentional to invite students to be part of business meetings, to be part of speaking in to our local community of the church and the surrounding needs of the community around us, and how we can serve and be part of being Jesus' hand and feet to local communities. We need to invite and engage students to build a relationship with people that may not be part of the regular youth program. They may not see even on a given Sunday or that, but they begin to build these relationships. Parents need to open doors to this. Grandparents may need to open doors to this. This is ones where the role of the parent is important. The role of grandparents is important, but it's also saying who else is part of that journey. We know that Chap Clark and Cara Powell released a study many years ago that found that really what students need is where it used to be. If you have one caring adult who following Jesus, investing into the lives of 5 students, you could help them move into their relationship with Jesus well beyond their teen years. Now what we're finding is that you need to have 5 adults sharing life and investing into kids who are fully committed to Jesus, to invest into one kid, to see that one kid be able to continue, that one teenager continue on in the faith. We need to be able to equip the church. We need to equip people in the church to say, it isn't just the role of those who love teenagers. It isn't just the role of youth workers and youth leaders that need to invest in the next generation. It's actually the collective responsibility of every congregation to invest into the youth and kids that are in their church, as well as those that are in their community, and say, this is a God-given responsibility coming out of Psalm 78 that we need to speak in to the next generation. We want to avoid the idea that we've just got a kids table and that the ministry has to happen either just at the kids table or just at the adult table. There's the kid table time, there's adult table time. There's a lot of intergenerational time that we want to see happen together. And ultimately, how about we don't have a kids table and an adults table, but we simply have the Lord's table. And we want to invite people to have a place to know that they are welcome at the Lord's table as they come into relationship and community. And from that place, they learn and grow and ask questions and doubt and struggle and have highs and lows, weaknesses and strengths. And through it all together, understand what it is to live as a fully committed follower of Jesus. And that's what we want to launch our young people into well. And we begin to do that by all having a seat around the table together and walking this journey, cross-generational lines together in faith. And there we go. Launching faith, launching well. As we move from this chapter into the next, this begins to have a key foundation of how we can step in to what is not yet, but how we can become that community as a church of being rooted in mentorship.
Matt, we appreciate your insights on what does it mean to actually launch into a faith journey well. And so, friends, as you know, all the other insights that Matt has given about chapters 1 to 5 is available at cboq.ca/book club. You can also find that link at the bottom of this YouTube video. And the next one is scheduled for Thursday, April the 15th at 7 p.m. And so this one will be on chapter 7, which is on youth-led and adult mentored. And so hopefully we will see you there for that one. In the meantime, blessings to you as you continue this conversation of what does it mean to have your youth ministry to be youth-led, adult mentored, and family empowered.